Try that again. Matthew 19:13. Then children were brought to him that he might lay his hands on them and pray. The disciples rebuked the people, but Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of heaven." And he laid his hands on them and went away. And that's where we're going to stop. Because there's way too much in this to just gloss over. We just came from, what was it? About divorce. I think it was what we were talking about last week, was the divorce in the beginning of chapter 19. Remember, Jesus is on his way to a particular event in his life, kind of a major event is about to happen to him. And he was healing them. That's in verse 2. And large crowds coming, he's healing them. Then we got interrupted with the Pharisees talking about divorce, trying to justify their actions. And we then pick up the story again in 13. Then the children were brought to him. And I just wanted to ask you guys this question. In 13 and in 15, it talks about laying of hands. And it didn't seem to be that Jesus cared that they were asking to be their children to have his hands laid on them. As a matter of fact, it seems to say, hey, thumbs up, let's do that. Why? What's this laying on hands thing? Doesn't it seem a little bit, I don't know, mystical, religious? And what's the deal about laying on hands? Who knows what angle I ever
get? That's true. All you do is just kind of
roll
the rock off the edge and let it see where it goes.
See what snake bites me.
And y'all need to help me on this one, but the Jewish tradition, you have to realize when you were, I should say, the Jewish tradition had, the anointing of oils and various things like that, but part of it was the laying on hands, and it was a blessing of sorts.
Right.
We see that. There, that's as far as
right. We see that in the Old Testament, where the blessing of the children of the Jacob, right? That was what I was looking for, and the blessing of the kids. That goes on there. So, what is this deal about laying the hands? We see it here. We've done it in our church when there's been a significant event or missionaries or people going out for a mission work, and we put our hands, we lay our hands on them, or stretch our hands out, or something like that. What's the deal? What's the significance of that? It's just a good religious practice. Let people know we're religious.
Commissioning or setting apart.
Yeah.
I definitely don't believe there's any
power.
Yeah, things that physically go through my arm to your shoulder or your head. That when I do it, I think it just shows a connection
that we're all together with it.
Yeah.
It could be.
So more of a visual representation of an internal thing, I guess.
Acts 6:6, they laid their hands on those that were chosen at that time.
Right.
They gathered them. They said it was a good thing, and they put them together and they laid their hands on them.
So
they commissioned them.
Right.
Set them apart.
Mm-hmm. When you came in this morning, you did the fist bump and then the confusing handshake type of stuff. There's something about physical touch.
I agree.
And really emphasized during this COVID stuff of last year about how do I acknowledge a person? How do I say I acknowledge you personally? In America we use handshakes a lot.
Send them a text.
We send them a text. Hang on a second. Hi, Jay.
Yeah, I know. Well, but going back, I'm talking, and we're all old enough to know back where, before this, you can't touch them and hands off and all this sort of stuff. Before all that politics and political correction, it was not unusual for us to come in and put a hand on your shoulder as we're talking.
Right.
Even for a woman, there's safe spaces or whatever you want to call it, but still you put your hand on their forearm, or maybe the shoulder as you're talking to them.
Right.
And it's more than just for balance, I'm at that age where I kind of need something just to get my bearings, but it's just that connection. And it sets that space, and it says, and I'm using, I guess, some of the terminologies, I'm allowing you in my bubble,
Right.
and I'm in your bubble with that intimacy, and I mean that in a pure
I
sense.
understand, yeah.
That we're having a good conversation, as opposed to, business distance,
Right,
and there's a lot to be said for that. And we used to all the time, or at least I did,
right,
church anywhere else. If it's somebody I knew, I'd go up and put my hand on their shoulder as I walk by.
right.
Just a touch, not necessarily a handshake.
It's just something about a physical touch.
Yeah.
It marks the relationship special, significant, right? On it. So with those in mind, then, why would then children were brought to them? The implication is parents brought the children. It doesn't actually say, and parents brought their children, but I think the implication is that. So why is that important that the parents would do that? As opposed to Jesus seeking them out. Come on, let me touch you, little kid. That kind of.
Exactly. I think it's kind of like we have the baby dedication here, in a similar sense. The parents want their children to be blessed, and I use
Right.
that kind of an Old Testament type of blessing,
Right.
to be blessed, and also to be in the presence of a great man, that type of
Right.
thing. So I think the parents were wanting to infuse their kids with some goodness.
Right.
It's an overly
Right.
simplistic way of saying it.
I read a book a long time ago. Not that reading a book is a novel thing for me, but it talked about blessing your children and about making an overt blessing to your kids. And I think that's what is going on here is that there's an acknowledgement that God is significant in that child's life. And it may not necessarily be for the child, but for the parents to see that blessing, to see that touch and do that. But it was tradition. The rabbis would bless the children, and do that. And you see that in Old Testament all the time. Okay, so the disciples said, "Hey, cut it out, cut it out." What? Why would the disciples? I went to a
That's
TV
easy.
program.
That's easy. Get away, kid, you bother me.
You bothered? You think it's about being bothered
Yeah.
with it?
He's got a more important business than to play games with kids.
So why would the disciples be like that? Was it because they were trying to be like the guys in the early part of the chapter and the Pharisees? Well, let's talk about difficult subjects, divorce, and let's be in the crowd of the Pharisees, because we're important like them. Are they trending towards that direction, or why would? I mean, in 18, we see examples of Jesus saying, "Hey, don't hinder the little children from coming to me." We see it all the time. Why would they?
I think
Well, back then, even women weren't looked on as, equals, so
right.
like, and the kids were,
Also,
hey,
less
yeah,
than that, yeah.
Yeah.
They were just
you
little
know,
rats.
Maybe that was part of it.
Maybe so.
Well, I think the disciples, there's a lot they didn't know, obviously.
Yeah.
They're being taught, and there's a lot of concepts they didn't understand, that they won't ever fully understand until after the resurrection, etc. But one thing they did know is protection. And that was their teacher, that was their leader, and I got this, and move out of the way. And I've always seen them as kind of Jesus's protectors. I mean that in a physical sense. Clearing the crowds, finding food for him, finding a place to sleep, finding water,
I see.
Yeah.
finding a suitable place for him to teach. Here's a good
Yeah.
rock, or whatever. I'm making this up, obviously. But one of them they can do is protection. They try to keep the crowds away. The lady that touched the hem of his robe, they were trying to keep him away. And I'm picturing her literally crawling underneath the guardrail to,
Right.
type of thing, like the parade routes is what I'm, envisioning. So I think that was something tangible that they knew how to do and could do, and that did it with fervor, keeping the kids away.
Yeah.
And then in Mark, you read about Jesus' actions, and you get the picture of crowds all day long pressing.
Yeah.
And when do we get a final little break? Or,
Yeah, right.
it might have been something to that effect.
I think so.
Do you think the disciples were, hindering Jesus' ministry?
Not knowing, not on purpose.
Yeah, okay.
I think they were, like they were saying, just trying to shelter him, give him a break.
Do
In
we-
so many areas, Jesus would break the mold
Right.
and do something that they weren't
Right.
accustomed to or used to.
Do we sometimes hinder the ministry?
Probably.
Well-meaning,
Without
but.
doubt. I mean, there's no question.
I'm sure.
But I think Jesus benefited from the disciples clearing the path, finding food and all that in many ways. And there's always opportunity, but I think Christ used that as an example and opportunity. Had they not done this, we wouldn't have a record of him. You know what I mean?
Right,
Yeah.
that's true, that's true.
So I think he used it as, what did Obama call it, a learning opportunity? Or teachable moment, or whatever the term they use.
Yeah.
So I think in a way they helped him.
Because the teachable moment, as we segue into that, is this, let the children come to me, and do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of heaven. I think that's the teaching moment, or the point behind all this. So does that mean that you can only come to God if you're a child?
Mentally, yes.
Or like a child, with some other verse.
Uses like a child. And here we see it says, for to such, this isn't saying it is this, but it's like as. And we see that, Steve, as you were mentioning in other scriptures, that it talks about being like as a child. That's what I was referring to in chapter 18. We talk about that.
But mentally and psychologically, we as adults are like children to God.
What are some aspects then of like a child? What does a child bring that?
A kind of a pure and simple faith.
Okay, it's a faith to.
Faith in Jesus, in who he says he is.
And you know, a child can come to the Lord, and so you don't want to hinder a child if he's being led towards the Lord. So a child doesn't have to become an adult to accept Christ, but the adult has to become more like the child in like faith. A child will believe and easier to accept.
Yeah, one of the
Come right
aspects
to you.
of a child is their ability, their amazing ability to believe.
Like sponges, yeah.
Right, and they will believe. You know, I remember once I made a mistake as a parent. This is parenting mistake number one. Is I think we were. I don't know if I was in San Antonio or here at the time. The kids were fairly young. They were still kind of in the car seats. And there was a railroad going over the interstate, right? And there was a train, happened to time it where the train was coming over and we're going under. And I quipped, I said, oh no, we're going to get run over by a train.
Yeah.
And my son would just started crying and believing that we were all going to die at this point. So lesson one, Howard, don't do that.
Yeah.
But it's just this remarkable ability to believe whatever Dad says, you know.
Right.
You know, it goes, that belief becomes that trust.
Right.
And that's that kind of that aspect of it. Proverbs, if you could look this up for me, what did I have written down? Proverbs, I think it is, 3:5. Proverbs 3:5.
3:5 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and don't lean on your own understanding.
Yeah, I think as we get older, we become this wiser, more understanding, and I think that becomes an injustice. The more we study God's word, sometimes it's not faith that we believe in, but in our own understanding. We start, oh, well, we can reason this out. We don't, you know. And sometimes we need that childlike trust.
Trust and openness for learning.
Right.
Because kids, they'll plow off and do something.
Yeah.
You know, here, let me show you how to do this. Oh, wow, this is neat.
Yeah.
You know, and it's that type of thing I see. Whereas adults, we go, I've been doing this for 40 years. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly.
As opposed to, oh yeah, that's a neat way of doing it.
Yeah.
I know it all.
Right.
And so it's you're right. It's that belief, and it's that search for knowledge.
Right.
Whether it's overt or not,
Right.
they're like sponges. They take it and they learn it, and they're unapologetic about it generally.
Right.
It's like, sure, I'll try it.
Right.
You know where that other verse is we were trying to remember about children coming like a child? It's only about a chapter before we are now.
18, right?
Yeah, we had covered it
Yeah,
recently.
yeah. If you don't have a faith like the child, you cannot enter into the kingdom of heaven.
That's it, 18:3.
Yeah, yeah. We just talked about it, people. No.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
that was 10 verses ago, so that was
Right,
a year and a half
about
ago.
a year and a half ago. Yeah, and so that is a criteria, if you will, to enter into heaven. He's kind of saying the same thing here. It's without that belief, which turns into trust. The answer is no. Okay, what other aspects of children? Characteristics of children? I wrote down 5.
No, no, you.
I got 5.
Hey, we're Baptists. You want to go 3?
I know, I have 3 points in a poem.
So what are the 2? What do you
So, belief.
believe?
A child's life is based on believing. Okay.
Okay.
What are some other things about children? Or do I have to seed this to you? How about
You're going with
their
thinking.
sense of awe and wonder?
Yeah.
They'll just stop, squat on the ground, and look at a bug crawling, and they're involved in the life of that bug. They're just
Even if they're supposed to be in right field playing a game.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever it might be, they just, and it's not about their lack of focus. I mean, type of thing. It's just that they look at something in this sense of wonder.
Yeah.
Wow, that is so cool. And I think at times as we get older, like you had said, been there, done that. You know, we're the old wise people. Nothing new. And I think at times we just need to stop and wonder about the awesomeness of God. And how He is created. We see in the Psalms all the time about when I consider the works of Your mighty hands. We just, I'm in awe of it. And I think that's that childlike attitude of always being in awe. I don't know if you guys know this, but I never use the word awe or awesome, A-W-E, or awesome, ever, except to describe God. When someone says, how was that meal? And they all go, the food was awesome. I refuse to use that word to describe anything but of things of God. Because I learned a long time ago that awe is meant for that. It's the awe of God. It's the highest level of appreciation. I'm not telling you guys to do that. That is me. That's why you'll never see. I'm always struggling for a word on how the food is. Well, it's really good or it's great.
It ain't awesome.
But it is not awesome. I'm sorry. God is awesome. And this doesn't compare anything
Makes sense. I just
to
never
God
tied that together.
on it. And that's that kind of that wow factor. I think that's to be such a child that just looks at things in awe.
And I see that, and some of us, engineer types are like that.
Yeah.
It's like you stop to figure it out. Now I tried to analyze it to break it down.
Right.
I showed Julie something yesterday. We were riding around in the house and there was a tree, a magnolia that had split and come back together.
Oh,
And
cool.
above and below looks like a perfect tree.
Oh, wow.
It's not like two
Yeah.
form. There's a hole in the middle.
Yeah.
And it was natural. It wasn't like blown through or.
Right.
And we sat there for the longest time. And I was going, how did that happen?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've done something similar, but with a mathematical formula. I'll look at it. I'll actually tap people on the shoulder. You got to look at this. This is the coolest formula ever. And they're all like, wow. I'm looking at the coolness of how this all comes together because man didn't make that.
Yeah.
That understanding. We just realized it, type of stuff. Okay, other aspects of children. What about their dependence?
Yep.
Total, absolute dependence. Unlike us. You know what? I'll figure it out for us, God. I'll get it all worked out, and I'll let you know the plan, and then I'll tell you if I approve of your plan or not. Children don't say, Dad, I'm going to evaluate what you've got for me today, and then I'll decide whether it's a yay or an A. When they're young.
Yeah.
When they become teenagers, that's another story. But
Yeah.
again, as we grow older, we become this independence, which that's not what the scriptures tell us to be, is to be dependent on it.
Mm-hmm. That's why I say it's so hard for someone that's really wealthy is because it's hard for them to depend when they start depending on the wealth
Yeah.
and not God because,
Yeah, that's right. You become
It's hard to-
independent. Right?
You can see the same thing about knowledge. I mean, some of the most biblically knowledgeable people are people knowledgeable about the Bible, they're atheists,
Yep.
that I've met. I mean, you know, some of these guys, they could quote every single verse in here, but they don't believe in God.
Right.
And, you know, I can't say I've worked on all of them because, but still, they're just amazingly smart. But they're too smart for their own good.
Right.
They have no faith whatsoever.
No.
But the kids will take that, call it faith, call it dependence, call it wonder, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like they have the knowledge, but yet they don't, they miss it. They you know, to know so much, but then yet not get it, you know, it's like, wow.
The kids, and I don't know if this fits into your, but since we're still missing a few, admit they don't know everything.
Right.
With the
Right.
word for that, I'm sure.
Right. I mean, you hear it all the time. I can't do that.
Yeah.
Right. They don't worry about the oh, what do you mean you can't do this? You know,
Stigma or whatever,
The
yeah.
stigma that we especially as men, I got it covered. You know, I don't need directions. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I can do it. Whereas a child, they'll readily admit, I can't do it. Their inability, I can't do that. And I think that's, again, great characteristic of a child of God, is to admit to God, I can't do this. You know, right off the top. It's not one of these, God, I will take care of it first, and then when I reach a certain saturation point, I'll call on you. It's like from the very beginning, right off the bat. I don't care if people make fun of me or not. I just can't do this. And I know myself as a personal way. I'm that way. I am not the guy that says, I'm going to go to God first. Yeah, I'm going to try to figure it all out. I'm going to resolve this out. And it's just my stinking character. Stop. All right. Let's see. What else did I write here? You guys come up with something. How about their amazing ability to forgive?
Oh, yeah.
It,
They generally don't hold grudges.
right. It's just, and you know, you go, Susan, I'm sorry I did that. Oh, that's okay, Daddy. Boom, we're done.
Yeah.
You know, that's it. So,
Yeah.
that's also an earmark of someone that, if I can call criteria to getting into heaven, if you will, or to be a child of God, is that thing. Okay, did I cover it all? Wonder, dependence, ability to forgive, admits their inabilities, and based on believing. Their life is based on believing.
Yeah.
But at least that's the 5 that I scratched in my notes here. Anything else? Something I hadn't thought of?
I guess the take-home point is not only children literally, but analogously adults
Right.
coming like a child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Take-home point.
And I really don't want to get off on a tangent, but this is something that I think we all fundamentally know the answer to this in this room. But this supports a little bit of what happens to children if they die before they have a chance for salvation or for
Right.
for the
That's true.
acceptance of salvation.
Yeah.
And that's that whole kind of like pastors joking about got baptized the right way, went under at an age of acceptance as opposed to
Right.
at birth being sprinkled. That whole conversation to me ties back to a certain degree into this. You have to read into it because it doesn't say very explicitly.
Right.
But this is one of the ones that go into that whole discussion.
Right. Yeah. That age of accountability type.
Yeah.
Thing.
Or those, and I know a number of kids that are retarded. Sorry, I don't
Yeah.
know what the right terminology is
Sorry.
nowadays.
YouTube will either strike this or not.
Yeah. But I don't know what the right term is, mentally disabled or.
It's still an English word in the dictionary. Keep
Yeah,
using
okay,
it.
thank
Yeah.
you. That don't have the ability to reason about
Right.
Christ.
Yeah.
So they're childlike, like a 2 or 4 year old,
Right.
but they're 40 years old.
Right.
What happens to them?
Mhm.
And I personally feel that God takes care of it.
Right. Yeah, I don't think God was trying to figure out a plan D or E
No,
on something like that.
no. So, but they have their own accountability to a certain degree, but they're childlike.
Right.
So if my grandchildren right now die for some reason, to me, they're gonna be taken care of in heaven.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether they were sprinkled or not. or maybe dedicated,
Right.
Yeah.
Or super dunked.
or super dunked, right?
Right. Right. Okay. Any other points? Amazing how 3-4 verses here can take forever to really bring it out.
You got me thinking, I'm going to do a little research on the whole laying on hands. I know there's a history there.
Oh, I'm sure there, yeah.
I thought maybe you had something for us.
No, I just, when I see things, I'd like puzzle on it and just start puzzling on a phrase or a word. And
Yeah.
just keep puzzling and say, okay, well, the guys will answer the question when I get there. So
Yeah.
that's I don't need to do the work, I just ask the questions.
But my father was from a country church well, came from a country in East Texas. And when we were driving by, this is 40 years ago, he pointed to a church, said, oh, that was the church Pastor so-and-so was at. So what happened? It was some church, I don't know if it was Baptist or not, I think it was, because that was all Baptist area, was caught with a battery. This is like back in the 40s or 30s.
Okay.
A battery in his back pocket, and he laid hands on people, they would feel the power of God. He got caught.
That sounds like one of these TV,
Exactly. That's why when you lay the hands, exactly where my head
It
is.
doesn't really.
The power went through me. Sorry, couldn't help that.
That's all right. No, why I asked the question is that there are a lot of people that perceive laying on hands as some kind of mystic formula.
Or anointing with oil.
Right.
Or, you know.
Yeah. All of these religious looking things are ways to manipulate God into doing things, right? To cause
said it
God
right
to do
there.
it. Yeah.
But trying to manipulate God.
God. Yeah.
And he can't be
No.
manipulated.
No.
He just laughs like we do when a kid
It's like-
tries to use reverse psychology
Stupid
on a
little
piece
kid.
of bubble gum in
Right.
the store or something.
Right.
you know.
Exactly.
We were talking about Jacob a moment ago, but he was losing his eyesight, and when he touched the son to see if it was his son, but if he had his eyesight, he probably would not have touched him and just given him the blessing.
Right.
Makes you wonder
Right.
about it.
Yeah. That's true.
Because with David, they actually poured the oil and went through like a little ceremony.
Right. They did. Yeah. And I think there is, from what I'm remembering in that book, there was some specific things that you did for bring a blessing. It's not like God
And that's
bless you.
like with
You know,
Jesus.
God bless you. It's
When-
not like that.
When Jesus was, before going to the cross, and she was there putting all that ointment on him and all, she was kind of like
Right.
yeah.
doing
Yeah.
that with him.
And then also you have to keep in mind the Old Testament versus the New Testament, because some of the things in the Old Testament were done because there was no direct conduit to God, which Jesus now provides. So some of that, the sacrifices and the blood sacrifices and the sin sacrifices and I forgot, it was like 5 or so
Yeah.
different sacrifices we don't have to do anymore because we've had the ultimate sacrifice. So I wonder if the blessings that hands, I don't think necessarily got cut off. I think that carried through.
All right, Steve, do you agree with me? He's got homework for next week, right?
I know, I've already
Give us a
got
report on it, so.
Do a report.
All right.
blessing in hand.
All right, we'll stop here. What are you guys praying for?